This podcast is a Tofop production.
Head to tofop.com for more.
The following episode of Tofop is rated MA for mature audiences. It may contain sexual references, time travel references, allegations of bin misconduct, and mild coarse language. Tofop advises that this episode is not suitable for anyone under the age of 15 or anyone who thinks a comedy conversation between two old mates sounds like a terrible idea for a show. Minors must be accompanied by a parent or guardian. This is John Deek speaking.
Everyone relax, this is Tofop. I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson. Hello, and thank you for watching.
And he's back, ladies and gentlemen. The Dark Knight Rises. He's back. Leg brace is on. He's got a long beard. He's wearing a dressing gown. We've lured him out of retirement.
I feel like I am very much like Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight Rises in that the last 3 months have genuinely been my version of being in the dressing gown and not leaving my room. Like, it's not because I am in some self-imposed isolation. I'm in a COVID isolation. I'm in a life isolation. And I do feel like I need, maybe you're Anne Hathaway breaking into my bedroom today to kind of...
So you're going to shoot an arrow at me?
Exactly.
I was thinking like who I would be. I thought I'd be more like Commissioner Gordon. Like we used to be partners. I'm fighting the good fight on my own. I'm not sure if you're even coming back. And then Podcast Mike is like Robin. He's the idealistic young cop who recognizes in you that you're a podcaster, man. I remember when you visited my podcast orphanage. Yeah. I was like, that guy, he pretends to be a comedian, but deep down I see he's a podcaster.
I could just tell. A podcaster recognizes another podcaster. That's how I knew who the world's greatest detective was when no one else could work it out. I just recognized it. I guess you are Commissioner Gordon. You, for the last 3 months, you've been holding shit down, right? Like, I've been away. I've disappeared. I've gone away.
Yep.
And you have been the hero that the city needs in that time, right?
Well, no. I think I've been holding shit together, putting like the Tofop signal in the sky. And I've been having to go, and this is no offense to any of the wonderful guests I've had on, but it's like, Batman's been away, so I've had to go to the second string superheroes. It's like, what's Kite Man doing? Can Kite Man come do the show?
What's Pangolin Man doing? Let's get Pangolin Man in the studio.
But it's good to have you back, man. I didn't realize till, it had been so long that I need these conversations because there's no one else who will entertain the kind of nonsense that enters my brain. I've tried numerous times over the break to sort of engage Gemma, and she always is just like, stop, that's a Tofop conversation. So what I've done, Will, is I've actually got my notes open on my phone, and here are some things I've jotted down.
Okay, brilliant.
Over the last few months, just ideas that have occurred to me. So I'm going to let you pick one to discuss. So, first one is vampire babies. Mm-hmm. No need to comment, just digest. Vampire babies.
Okay, vampire babies.
The second one is I'm pretty trustworthy.
Okay, all right, I like this. I'm into it so far. I'm pretty trustworthy, vampire babies.
The next one is the career of Drew Carey.
Oh my God. All right, okay, so vampire babies, I'm pretty trustworthy, the career of Drew Carey. Not Wayne Carey.
Yeah. No.
Drew Carey. Of the Drew Carey Show, the eponymous Drew Carey Show. The pride of Cleveland.
That's right. Multi-millionaire, like one of the wealthiest comedians going around, I found from my research. And then the last thing I've jotted down is, am I a friend to spiders or a scourge of insects?
Okay, here's what I'm going to say. Spiders and insects, I feel like where we live, spiders and insects are going to be a topic that comes up again. We don't need to go with spiders and insects today. There will be an opportunity tomorrow, next week, and for the next however many years until the planet explodes for us to talk about all the spiders and insects there are in our area. So let's rule that out. I am fascinated by vampire babies because the thing that it immediately reminds me of is What We Do in the Shadows, where Laszlo is in quite big trouble because he once turned a baby into a vampire. And it's one of my favourite running jokes in the show is this vampire baby who is forever both a baby and a vampire. You're very trustworthy. Yeah. I don't know. For me, Drew Carey appeals. I've got to be honest with you. I feel like the career of Drew Carey, after such a long time off, the fact that we might come back and talk about something that is not topical in any way, like the career of Drew Carey, feels very on brand for Tofop.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Because I don't know what triggered it, but I just had one of those moments where I'm like, where's Drew Carey these days? Like, I remember at one stage he seemed to be everywhere. What was the improv show he had?
Whose line is it anyway?
Whose line is it anyway? That's right. But it was the Drew Carey show. Like in the late 90s, I'm not sure if it was just like a uni student thing, but everyone I know who at uni loved the Drew Carey show. Like it was like people, it was the cooler sitcom at the time in an era of kind of like Seinfeld and Friends. Drew Carey, it was still mainstream, but had like, slightly sort of cooler factor. And so I went on to Wikipedia and discovered that all right, let's get into it. Should we just do like some old school Tofop and we'll just go through the Wikipedia entry? All right, so can you guess his middle name?
Is his first name Drew? Like, is his first name actually Drew,
Yes.
or is that short for Andrew?
It's listed here as Drew.
Okay, so Drew Carey. Give me a clue then. Give me a Drew clue.
Well, his middle name is traditionally a female name.
Okay.
Like one of those ones. I wouldn't even say it's one of those ones like Jamie or Charlie that seems to sort of move between male and female. This one to me, I've only really heard it used as a female's first name.
I mean, I've got to be honest with you. Drew traditionally to me is a female's first name as well. I always think of like Drew Barrymore or like somebody like that. Like when I think of the name Drew.
Is there any other famous Drews? Drew Barrymore, Drew Carey, Drew. That's it, right? There's only two.
I mean,
the two Drews.
There's Quick Draw McGraw, but that's a different tense, so I don't think that counts.
Yeah, right. Quick Drew McGrew.
His cousin, his female cousin, Quick Drew McGrew.
Okay, so it's traditionally a girl's name, and
Brittany.
Okay,
Drew
I'll give you a
Brittany
clue.
Carey.
No, I'll give you a clue that is specifically tailored to your interests. So it is the first name of a star of Community, the TV show Community, as well as being the surname of a mid to late 90s to early 2000s North Melbourne half forward who once took Mark of the Year.
Oh my God.
So do you want that clue again?
Yeah, I want the
Welcome.
clue again.
For anyone who's missed Tofop, we're back, in case you can't tell.
I mean, I feel like by
the
giving two clues, you've made it harder than one of the individual clues. So give me them slowly, one at a time.
Okay, so it is the first name of one of the stars of the television show Community, as well as being the last name of North Melbourne half forward who played in the late 90s to the early 2000s and once took Mark of the Year.
Okay, so this. Okay, so it's got to be.
Who's on Community? Start with who's on Community.
Well, I'm Donald Glover.
Yeah, but female.
Oh, yeah, I know, but I'm just talking about who's on Community at the moment.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
Which female guests are on Community? I can't remember the names of any of the women who are on Community.
Okay, her surname is also the name of a cheese.
Okay, so Lucy Cheer, Brenda Colby,
Kate Cheddar.
Edna Singles.
We'll go to North Melbourne. Can you think of who's I've got his page up as well. So, all right, he played 228 games. It's actually the late 80s to the late 90s, 87 to 99, and he played one season for the Sydney Swans. His initials were BA.
BA.
His father also played for North Melbourne. His name was Tom. Fucking hell. I didn't really think it was going to be this hard.
B.A. Baracus from the TV show The A-Team. Was it Mr. T?
That's right.
Are we talking about Mr.
Drew
T?
Carey's middle name
Mr. T.
is Mr. T.
Carey.
Drew Allison Carey.
Oh, okay. Brett Allison. That was his name, right?
Brett Allison.
Yeah, okay.
And the star of Community is?
Alison Bray. Alison Bray? Brie?
Hey, Brie, type of cheese.
Yeah. Oh, Brie, of course. That was the cheese clue, yes.
Yeah, not a donkey sound. Do donkeys bray? They don't?
I mean, I have not done this for a while, Charlie. It's been 3 months. Like, it was a bit hard for me to work all that out. It was too much information coming to me at once. You talk about the fact that you've talked to Gemma about topics, and she's like, that's a podcast topic. No one has made me guess anything in the last 3 months by a series of elaborate and interrelated clues. So my brain just wasn't in the right mode for it.
Okay. Drew Allison Carey, DAC. What year was he born, Will? I'll give you a clue.
I'm going to say 1964.
It's in the 50s.
Oh, really? Okay. 1959.
1958. He was in the US Marine Corps. Did you know that before he got into comedy?
No, I did not know that. I mean, it does explain the haircut. That is very much the
It
haircut
does
of a man
explain the
who was in
haircut.
the Marine Corps. Like, it never looked like a comedian's haircut. It always looked like a military haircut, to be honest. So that does clear up a lot of things.
And they have like a headshot. In fact, I can actually, this is the great thing about this new technology we're using, Will. So for people listening, we've moved to a new platform, is I can actually share my screen with you so you can see what I'm looking at. Okay. So, okay, I'm just going to share my screen with you so you can see the photo I'm looking at. Is that working? No, it's not working. Forget it. Let's pretend I was just able to share my screen. But there is a photo of him, his headshot, or not a mugshot, what do you call it? Like, I guess it's a headshot in the army when you get like your ID.
Well, I guess it's not an army headshot, probably. They probably don't call it a headshot because there'd be other things in the army that you refer to as headshots, and it'd be really confusing if you got those two, like, you know, mixed up. Like, you're just like, you know, Drew, you're coming in tomorrow for a headshot, and someone literally shoots you in the head because they've just gone, we should call this something else. We are around military and guns all the time.
So he was super handsome in the 70s, like when he was in his 20s. Like, it's just like he looks like a movie star. Like, he kind of has and this is probably like a bad association, but he's got a bit of that Arnie Hammer kind of waspish, square-jawed, blonde, even like a Hemsworth kind of vibe. Like, that's what he's rocking in this photo.
Well, that's
So
actually, it's funny you say Army Hammer because that's how he put on all that weight, eating other people.
Are we allowed to joke about that? I thought you weren't meant to joke about Arnie Hammer eating people or wanting to eat people or whatever that was.
I don't know. What's the reasoning behind us not being able to joke about Army Hammer wanting to eat people? Like, as long as we're not on Army Hammer's side, as long as we're not like, isn't you know who I like more now? Army Hammer, because like he's really bad to women and wants to eat people. But I think we can joke about the fact that Army Hammer wants to eat people.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I'm so terrified of saying the wrong thing these days.
Who are we offending? Are we getting who are we offending?
Cannibals, reformed cannibals.
Well, no, I think, you know what, I'm fine to offend cannibals. You still got to be able to offend some people, and I'm going to draw the line at cannibals. That's not just a lifestyle choice, right? You can't just say, no, like, I'm a sovereign citizen and I'm also a cannibal now. Like, I like to eat people. That's how people got here in the first place. We ate other people, and I want to respect the original way of living. It's like a paleo thing. I'm going back to eating other people. This is my new diet. Oh, by the way, just for the record, your screen share just popped up on the screen. The technology does work. It just took a little bit of time. And that's the Drew Carey on TV is not that person.
That's a movie star. That's an extra from like Platoon, but like a handsome, like movie star soldier, right?
Absolutely. He is super handsome. And obviously updating his Wikipedia page every day to make sure they keep that photo of him there instead of the rest of them.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking about this morning when Wikipedia, you know, we sort of started becoming aware of Wikipedia, well, at least for me in the early 2000s. And do you remember it was fun for your mates to all like hack your Wikipedia page? And I remember, I still don't know who's responsible for this, but the first acting role I ever had on TV was a tiny role in On the Beach, where I was a sailor who went AWOL. And my character's name was Seaman Byers. And someone got onto my Wikipedia and just change the spelling, semen buyer, to someone who purchases semen.
Like, I mean, I guess there are people who purchase semen. There are people who sell semen.
Yeah.
Do you
like
think
breeders and stuff, right?
Right. Okay. So breeders, like, I grew up on a dairy farm. There's artificial insemination. So obviously you don't need to get a bull around like they traditionally did. You can actually just they have semen sellers, right? So they've got to have semen buyers. Is there, you might do if you're buying a house or something like that? Do you think there's specialist semen brokers, like an in-between person who, if you want to buy some semen, but you don't want to go to Big Semen, you want an
I would love
intermediary
that.
to kind of go and handle it. Do you think there are specialist semen brokers?
Yeah. I reckon there's like a trade expo where all the kind of breeding programs bring samples of their best
Right.
semen. And you just get the experts walking down the aisle. Just
Like a
little
sommelier.
screen, and they're just like,
Just
yeah.
smelling, tasting, spitting
nutty,
back out into the bucket.
That's a stallion.
You know what they say about semen brokers? They always spit, never swallow. That is the one rule
I
of the
know.
job.
I was going to say, it's really rude. I mean, that is expensive semen. You better swallow that.
No. This is the rule. You swish it around in your mouth, you get the mouthfeel, you assess it, you make some notes in your notebook, you put out your reviews, obviously, at the Spermies every year.
All right. So Drew was born in 1958, youngest of three. He was raised in Cleveland, Ohio, pride of
Yes.
Ohio, as you said.
Pride of Ohio. In fact, as I've spent a lot of time in Cleveland, Ohio. I used to play the comedy club Hilarities there very regularly when I was living in the US. They were one of the clubs that was most supportive of me. Famously, the club that Jerry Seinfeld was playing the night he got the fax to be told that Seinfeld had been commissioned as a TV show. That club's been there for 50 years. It's so much history. And Drew Carey, of course. So you can imagine when you go to Cleveland, that's like me walking into the basketball stadium in Cleveland and going, oh yeah, LeBron James, this is where he grew up and he played basketball. Drew Carey was that bigger name in Cleveland because he literally embraced Cleveland, loved Cleveland, and the Drew Carey show kind of put Cleveland, made it a bit hip, made it a bit cool.
Yeah. And so where was Dave Letterman from? He was the pride of what? He was...
It's like
he wasn't in Ohio,
the
was he?
Midwest somewhere, right? Isn't he
Yeah. Mike,
Yeah.
can you look up where Dave Letterman was from? That's another feature of this new platform we're using is Mike, we can hear him and sometimes see him when he turns his camera on. We've told him he's allowed to include himself in the podcast by turning his camera on and signaling us, waving, so we know to stop talking. But we don't have to wait for him to type anymore. All right. So, Mike, have you got an answer for us on Dave Letterman?
Oh, yes, of course. Indianapolis.
That's
Yes.
right. Okay, so when Drew was 8 years old, his father died of a heart attack. He played the cornet and the trumpet in a marching band, and he graduated high school in 1975. What's a cornet? Is that like a little trumpet? That's the...
Yeah, but made out of the ice cream, a cornetto. So basically what they do is you eat the ice cream off the top and then you play the remainder of the cone. That's a cornet.
Okay, so he went to Kentucky State, was expelled twice due to poor academic performances.
Yeah, well, he only went to Kentucky State because we thought it was Kentucky Fried Chicken State. And so...
No, this is like hunky Drew Carey. This is six-pack Drew Carey. Although, actually, you might be right, because this is pre-Marine. So maybe he got shipped off, to bloody straighten himself up, get short back inside. So 22 years old, enlists in the Army, and he served for 6 years as a field radio operator for the 25th Marine Regiment.
Oh,
That's something that I reckon you and I could do.
This is some
if
good
we had
morning
to-
Vietnam shit. This is what's going on here.
Yeah, totally.
He's on the field radio, but he's actually constantly giving instructions, but also making the boys laugh, realizes that he has a knack for comedy. He's like, you know what, I'm going to take this banter mainstream.
So I reckon that's, if you and I, let's say conscription was a thing and we were young enough to be conscripted, I reckon that's what you and I should angle for. It's like, hey, we'll be the radio guys, but we just need an hour a week where we can just stay on the comms and just fucking talk about stuff we find on Wikipedia. Is that cool? It's like, we will court-martial you right now before you even get into the field.
No, we will work for free, but we just have to get nowhere near the guns and where all the war bit is. We'll give all the messages out to people during the day, and just from midnight to 6 a.m. when everybody's asleep, we're just allowed to do our imaginary radio show. That is all we ask.
All right, so his stand-up career. It starts in 85, following suggestions by his mate David Lawrence, who was a disc jockey who'd been paying Drew to write jokes for him. The following year, he won an open mic contest and became an MC at the Cleveland Comedy Club. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, well, unless it was called something else back then, no.
Okay. So he starts performing all over Cleveland and LA, and then he comes to national attention competing on Star Search. So the American Red Faces.
I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? That like he's
Yeah.
being able to go on one of those style shows, like an America's Got Talent style show, and be so good at stand-up. Because I always associate those shows with being more, I mean,
Stunty.
well, you know what the other thing
They're
is?
kind of like
You're very
gimmicky.
aware of how unfancy stand-up is when you see it in that environment. Like if you go to a theatre
Yeah.
to see a stand-up, the fact that it's just a person on stage doing a show, you're not comparing it to anything else. So you go, oh yeah, this looks like a show. This is a thing that I recognize. But anytime there's like an acrobat and a musical act and like a group performing together, and then just a dude comes out and go, here's my act. I'm going to talk. Hopefully
Yeah.
well enough that it's
It's
better
like,
than this
what?
person who can put their ankles around their ears.
What was the Australian? I don't know if we had Star Search or if it was like Potluck, the one that Ernie
Yeah.
Sigley hosted.
Yeah, I think it was
what
called Potluck, maybe.
Right. And I do remember very distinctly a guy coming out and doing stand-up. And it was the late 80s. And he had that classic kind of 80s comedian look where he just needed a brick wall behind him. And he was American. And the narrative I've created in my head is that this guy arrived in Australia and was like, look at all these fucking rubes. Like, in his mind, he's like, I'm the equivalent of Superman here. Like, they don't know what entertainment is. I'm just going to get on TV and be American. And that's going to be my superpower. And these Aussies are going to laugh. And it was the most excruciating set. Like, it was so bad that even 30 plus years later, I can remember it. And his whole kind of the through line, his callback joke was about the fact that, you know, when he came to Australia, his wife made him buy a Honda, you know, and it's like it's a shitty little car, Honda. And then, you know, he talked about like, you know, I'm going to go rob a bank. When they ask, have you got a weapon? I'm going to say, yeah, why don't I take you for a drive in my Honda? And like, just like dead silence. And then when it came time to score, like Bernard King, oh boy, like he was just sitting there, just like rubbing his hands together going, I get to eviscerate this ponytailed American.
You know what I love about that? At one stage, I would have thought being American was just enough. Because in the Australian entertainment industry, it seems until recently in our history, and in fact still to a certain extent on those reality shows that you talk about, we can't just have an Australian judging panel. You've got to import somebody like internationally, regardless of the fact that that person might not even be as big in the industry internationally as someone local that you could get is big in the industry internationally. But there is still a cultural cringe factor. So the fact that like, he was like, he must have been looking at Australian TV, this dude going, well, being American is enough of a skill. I don't need to write any jokes. I'm an American.
It's like, I watched their television awards show. The butler from The Nanny was like guest of honor.
Guest of
I mean,
honor.
fucking hell.
Niles from The Nanny was guest
Not
of honor.
even the third billed star on that show. Like maybe fourth or fifth, but the kids probably get higher billed than him.
Yeah, guest of honor. I mean, like the most important person at their awards night for their industry was Niles from The Nanny. Surely being American isn't, I mean, it was clearly enough to get him on the show. Like, obviously, he sent in an audition tape and someone went, he's American, whack him on.
I mean, this is something I don't want to get into too much because on this week's FOFOP, Mr. Sunday Movies, James Clement is my guest, and we talk about this insane clip I found from Hey Hey It's Saturday in 1987, and it's Johnny Depp, guest star, fresh off the hottest show on TV, 21 Jump Street, coming to Australia to promote the show, and they sit him on the Red Faces judging panel, and it's like, if you had to sort of sum up Hey Hey It's Saturday into a 10-minute clip, it's everything. Like, it's everything. It's the weird kind of like, you know, Daryl Summers just hamming it up terribly. Johnny Depp does this scene, like this little pre-filmed sketch with Ozzy Ostrich. Like, they do like this interrogation scene, nose to nose, like it's good cop, bad cop kind of thing. And James and I were talking about it, and like, isn't it insane that this is the number one show in Australia and the biggest star, arguably, in the world, the biggest TV star in the world comes out? And he's like, well, what talk show am I going to do? Who am I going to speak to? And it's like, you see that pink ostrich over there? You're going to improvise with him.
And
Like,
and
what
we've
the
got
fuck
and we've
are
got
we
to
doing?
and we've got to tell you, Johnny, because Johnny's like, but what about the human? And you go, no, Johnny, you'll be happier with the ostrich.
Yeah.
Definitely,
Oh,
guarantee. You've dodged a
Mate.
bullet. In fact, Johnny probably looked at him and said, I'm only talking to the ostrich.
There is a bit in it which is such like it's classic Daryl Summers where, so Johnny comes out to the screams of the audience and Daryl's doing his clumsy kind of like, how do you like Australia? And he's saying like, have you been enjoying yourself? Have you been going out to the discos? And does like a little shimmy. And Johnny like goes to answer, but sort of like laughs because he sees Daryl do this little shimmy and he's like, do that again? And so Daryl is like, great, I've got my bit. And so Daryl starts doing the shimmy and then doesn't stop doing the fucking shimmy for like the next 3 minutes. Like he's just hamming it up to the point where they cut back to Johnny Depp and you can just see the look on his face where he's just like, where am I? What is this? Is there even film in those cameras? Am I about to be executed? Have I been sent to some kind of weird cult-like island?
You know what? It may have been the thing that broke Johnny Depp. If we do a timeline, we might look back and realize this is where it all went wrong for Johnny Depp. Maybe this is the point where he just like lost touch with all reality, because we've now had experience of the international scene. Like we can see what American talk shows look like, you know, and none of them have ever looked like Hey Hey It's Saturday. There are so many elements going on in Hey Hey It's Saturday that it was just this, like, can you imagine, like you're used to going on Letterman or you're used to going on like Johnny Carson or Conan or like, you know, one of these sort of shows. And yes, there might be some fun and some mayhem. You might even do a sketch or something like that. But mostly it's just going to be you interacting with the host or maybe one of the other guests who was on the panel. Then you come out to Australia. You're already in a foreign environment. They wheel you into a studio. They've got a
You're
dude
jet-lagged.
hosting the show who seems to be the least qualified person to host a television show you've ever met in your entire life. Then you meet his co-host, a pink ostrich. And then, as if that is not enough for your head, you sit down to judge red faces. I mean, we must have done our international reputation, put it back 20 years by making celebrities watch red faces, right? And so you're suddenly watching red
Easily.
faces while somebody's drawing pictures. Oh, this might be pre-Andrew Fife, but like somebody's drawing pictures on the screen. Somebody's putting subtitles on the screen. There is voices coming out all over the place. Somebody's talking to an angel. There's like a little head on a stick that's popping up under the desk like Mr. Depp, Mr. Depp. Like, can you imagine how overwhelming that experience must be for somebody who just does not understand that show and has never seen it before?
And it's also like the standard of the acts. Like it's not Star Search. Like the guys who come out to compete. The last sketch is two kids from an improv group like Melbourne University or something like that. And they've got this sketch that they've written, which is just the two of them. I guess the joke is it's a nightclub. They're doing an ad for a nightclub where it's for people who are into astrology. So it's all like, are you a Leo? Then come to the bar and blah, blah, blah. But it's not funny. It's like, again, it's excruciating watching these two young, like, you know, performers or probably law students, you know, but doing some kind of theatre on the side. But it's just like, it is mind-boggling. Every time I try and explain Hey Hey It's Saturday to Gemma or Daryl Summers, I have to pause and go, was this really the biggest show we had for like 20 years? Because it was, right? It was huge.
I mean, it was so huge that they keep trying to bring it back. That's how huge it was. Like, despite the fact that it's never worked when they've tried to bring it back. And some people would argue it went on a little bit too long at the end. There was so much love for it when it was at the peak of what it was that there is still an appetite. They did that, you know, best bits of Hey Hey It's Saturday and it rated its ass off.
Yeah. Back to Drew Carey. So he does Star Search, wins that. Then he appears on Johnny Carson. His performance impressed Carson so much they invited him to join him on the couch. Has there been a showbiz trope as kind of powerful as the Johnny Carson couch? Like the idea that if you do a good set, you come sit and you've been anointed. Is there an equivalent in any other field of entertainment?
I mean, you know, there was Harvey Weinstein's couch, but that's probably something we shouldn't speak about. If we're drawing lines, I'm happy to go after the cannibals, but I'm going to draw the line at that sort of joke. But definitely in comedy, you know, in American comedy, it was so much part of that folklore, the people who did Carson the first time. And for people who don't know the story behind it, if Johnny liked you, which was the biggest thing in American show business in comedy, he would, after your set, invite you over to the desk to have a little chat or to sit down with him. I was listening to somebody tell the story of Roseanne the other day, when Roseanne basically got plucked out of obscurity to go and do Johnny Carson. And Roseanne this spot kind of made her a star. Like, she went out and absolutely nailed it. But apparently, literally did the set, put her head down and just fucked off back off stage because she did not want to face that moment of kind of looking over and knowing whether she was going to get invited over. Chances are, based on what she'd done, she was definitely getting invited over, but she wasn't even, she was like, nah, like head down, fucked off.
Yeah. That's what I would have done as well.
Yeah.
One of the most brutal versions of those I've seen was Letterman. I can't remember who the comedian was, but you know, sometimes you'll see a Letterman interview where he clearly does not like the guest or he's had a shitty day and he's just given nothing. I've seen him. It's so sad, but there's a clip of him and Lou Diamond Phillips where Lou Diamond Phillips is everything you want your talk show guest to be. He's funny, he's self-deprecating, he's doing impressions. But Letterman's just having none of it. Just fucking undercutting him, stonewalling him, just wants this interview to be done. I don't know, probably like some hot actress was bumped for Lou Diamond Phillips and he was having none of it. But the worst one I've seen was a comedian do his 2 minutes or whatever it is. And Dave just walks onto stage, shakes his hand and says, "Thank you, you're very brave." That's why you run off stage. Speaking of brave, how did your shows go the last 2 nights? It's your first time on stage.
Yeah, so first time on stage since June, and because I'm about to go to Adelaide. By the time people hear this, I'll be arriving in Adelaide. So please come and see my show at the Adelaide Fringe. It is not a show yet. It will be a show at some stage. All the trial shows that I was going to do to put together a show all got cancelled. So Adelaide is now when I'm going to discover what that show is. But I did a couple of improv shows on the weekend at the Brunswick Picture House, which were really great fun. I was talking to this audience member who came and saw me 20 years ago. And he goes, "This is my first time back after 20 years. And I'm like, okay, I'm interested in this. Like, was it so bad when you saw me 20 years ago that you haven't come back for 20 years? And he goes, no, it was good. And now I'm more fascinated. Like 20 years ago, he came and saw me, like when I wouldn't have been that good, and enjoyed the show, and then went, "That'll do, pig. That'll do."
That's a great compliment. It was that good. It was like 20 years worth of
I've
laughs.
had my fill.
Like, I like to imagine.
I know you've done
like
other
if
stuff
you
since
filmed
then,
him.
but I just can't. I'm sorry. It's delicious, but I can't fit any more comedy in.
Yeah, like imagine if it was like 7 Up or the movie Boyhood, you know, you filmed him over that 20 years. Like he left the gig laughing, like hysterically,
Yeah.
and then you just sort of like do a montage over the years and just like the laugh is just gradually decreasing till it gets down to just a chuckle. And then he's like, all right, I guess I'm ready for another dose of Will Anderson hilarity. That's a good 20 years worth. How was it though being on stage after 6 months? Well, considering, I mean, it's not just the fact that you've had this big layoff, but you know, considering COVID and everything, was it weird?
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird to even do it. Like, you know, the first night, there was a real sense in the room of like, are we doing the right thing? And, you know, certainly, you know, the idea that everyone's going to wear their masks or, you know, that everyone's going to check in or any of those sort of things has gone out of the window a bit. So we're still in this weird
Yeah.
period where, you know, those who are vulnerable to the disease that we need to protect are still vulnerable, even though, you know, this version, we might be more out and about in public, there might be less restrictions. But if, you know, if somebody is susceptible to, you know, COVID, they're not any less chance of being severely affected by it at the moment. So it is that real conundrum where you're just like, I know that people have to go out to essential things, but am I an essential thing? That was the biggest question I had to ask myself, was like, I did not feel like I was essential mid-January. I did not feel like I could do a show good enough that it was worth coming out and risking your life to see. I would hate to lure you out on that false promise that you're on your deathbed in the ICU going, it was fucking worth it. It was fucking worth it. If I live another 20 years, I'll be back.
All right, Drew Carey, the Drew Carey Show. So he tried a couple of things in TV, a couple of sitcoms, and then he gets the Drew Carey Show. It revolves around a fictionalized view of Carey as he took on the stresses of life with his group of childhood friends. It premiered in 1995. In his autobiography, Carey revealed his frustration with having to deal with censors and being able to employ the off-color humor in his stand-up routines. That was what I was going to ask. Are you familiar with Drew Carey's stand-up? Have you seen Drew Carey's stand-up? I have no idea what he would be like.
I've seen Drew Carey do stand-up, like little spots of stand-up, but I've never like watched a Drew Carey special or anything like that. From the bits I saw, I was always like, oh yeah, I get this. This is like To me, it always had a bit of like a cleverer Tim Allen shtick. Like, you know, he was clearly a smarter,
Yeah.
funnier guy, but there was like he had a personality and a trait and a characteristic, and that was his stand-up.
I imagine it would be like white collar schlub, not sort of blue collar schlub, but works in an office schlub, has glasses, probably a bit more literate. That's my complete reading of the situation based on nothing else but his sitcom.
Well, you got the impression that the Drew Carey show was based on his act. That was the thing that Americans would do at the time, right? This is the age of your Seinfeld or your Home
Roseanne.
Improvement, where they would, like Roseanne, where they go, here is this person's act. We are going to turn that act and their story into a version of a show.
But wouldn't you prefer to have seen Tim Allen's, like, you know,
Selling
version-
coke and ending up in prison version?
Yeah, just like rolling on his fucking like mates and things, like going to prison. That's what I want to see. That as he's in the prison shower, you know, like that's the version of Home Improvement we should have seen. The big house improvement. That's what it
There's a
should have been.
neighbour in a neighbouring cell who he only gets to see from the eyes up. You're just poking over the wall. Just keep all the tropes.
It's just get beaten with like bars of soap in a pillowcase. So initially, he was earned $60,000 when the show started. You know what he was earning per episode by the end?
I'm going to
Less than a
say,
mil, I'll say.
oh, okay. So, well, I'm going to say close to a mil though, like maybe 800,000 an episode.
Yeah, 750,000. It cost $3 million an episode to create. Well, probably because you're paying your fucking star almost $1 million.
I was going to say, cost
Save you
$2
a
million,
bunch
and
of
then
money.
it cost you $1 million for the star of the show.
So they did 233 episodes. And then he also started hosting Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I don't remember, did he get up occasionally with the improvisers, with like Ryan Stiles and stuff? He would, right? He'd occasionally get up there and flex his improv chops.
Yeah, although often, even in those moments, he wasn't doing a lot of necessarily improv. Like, he was playing games, but he was always sort of the setup person, the straight man. But that's one of the things I really like about Drew Carey. Like, from like observing his career externally, it feels like to me he's never been afraid to have smarter, funnier people on shows with him. And I think that is actually a great compliment. He's never had to be the funniest person in the show. In fact, I think that he realizes that he's a good coordinator, and if he surrounds himself with really funny other characters, that is only going to benefit him.
You know, it's just a little sidebar. I saw a video of Jerry Seinfeld, like an interview he was doing with, who was it? I think, was it maybe Howard Stern or someone like that? And they're talking about Curb Your Enthusiasm. And Howard was saying, so, you know, like, it's improvised, but, you know, Larry's got an idea. And Seinfeld's like, yeah. He's like, but he's gone, here's the thing. Like, when we did Seinfeld, he's gone, I don't want to hear what a fucking actor has to say. I don't want to hear what an actor thinks the line should be. Just say the line that we wrote. And that on top of the Larry Sanders, what's Larry Sanders' real name again? What's his name? Larry Sanders. What's his real name?
Oh, for the actor from the Larry Sanders show.
Yeah. No. Who's Larry Sanders? The comedian. What's his name? You know, bloody Larry Sanders. Who played Larry Sanders?
Gary Shandling?
Mike, who played...
Are you talking about Gary Shandling? I got confused because I thought you were talking about... Anyway, whatever. Like, go on, please. You were talking about Curb Your Enthusiasm, and then you said Larry, and I didn't realize that you had jumped to a completely different person in this conversation. Yeah. That was what was confusing.
It was a very confusing conversation. The point I was trying to make is in two separate interviews, I've seen Jerry Seinfeld just fucking hate actors. Like, just think they are the most worthless commodity. They don't... On the Gary Shannon thing, he's like, they don't write anything. They just wear clothes other people design for them. They, you know, say things in a way that someone else tells them to say. And then this Howard Stern thing is like, I don't give a fuck what an actor thinks. And I was like, I feel personally attacked. I'm like, there's lots of good improvisers out there. That's like how Adam McKay, you know, makes a movie.
I mean, also, it's just completely wrong because... Like, even if they're not improvising the words, I get that idea that a comedian might know the lines in a comedy better than somebody improvising those lines. I get that, particularly in a show like Seinfeld. But funnily enough, last night, Amy and I were watching, they did this big sort of compilation clip show, you know, before the final episode of Seinfeld. And it's not one of those things that ever, when we're rewatching Seinfeld, we never stop down before the final episode and watch like the clip show of the 10 years of Seinfeld. But last night, just to have something sort of brain bleachy on in the background, we put on this clip show. You had to watch some bloopers and some highlights. And the thing that I said to Amy constantly was particularly those three core actors, like Michael Richards for all the, other Michael Richards shit.
What are you talking about?
Jason Alexander and Julia Louis-Dreyfus are three of the greatest comedic actors that have ever been on screen. Like, what they give to these scenes, what they give to these lines, like, because when you see them in a compilation, because they're just playing clips of, and often not even with the words, often you're just like, they had some music on and there'd just be a bunch of clips of them doing physical comedy. The acting and performance they brought to that show. And then the fact that Jerry, this guy who's like, I don't rate actors, is being carried through because he can't act at all. Yeah. Like, he is a terrible actor. Like, who is he in a position? What he should be saying is, isn't it amazing that, like, my words and my jokes and my ideas, like, can be brought to life by these incredible actors? Because Seinfeld, the show, isn't Seinfeld the show if those other three are stand-up comedians who can perform the same amount as Jerry Seinfeld can. If the four cast members all had the performance skills of Jerry Seinfeld, Seinfeld would not be the show that it was. So that just says that it's not just the writing, it's also about the performance and the acting.
Something happened to Jerry with an actor. Like, it's either multiple experiences where he's just like fucking douchebags, or there's one particular actor that has like scarred him for life. Because it's like to reference your other podcast, Two Guys, One Cup, it's like Nick Revolt and Reece Stanley. Like, I've just noticed, I've seen a few interviews with Jerry, and whenever there's a chance to pot an actor or deride the profession of acting, he's always like, yeah, they're fucking useless. They don't do anything. It's like, what happened to you, Jerry, man? What happened to you?
But he went after Bobcat Goldthwait on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, like Jerry. And, like, had a real unnecessary sledge of Bobcat. Like, Bobcat wasn't on the show. Like, he's got some problem with Bobcat. And he was with, like, Bridget Everett or somebody like that. And he started slagging off Bobcat and going, like, some people are funny and some people just, like, do funny voices because they're not really funny. And, like, it's this whole thing. Apparently, like, Bobcat and Jerry Seinfeld have had this enmity for, like, all these years. And I'm like, even if you are having that, don't get in your billion-dollar car from your airport hangar full of cars and then, like, drive around with someone else entirely and then just decide to slag off another comedian. Like, I mean, I don't think anyone thinks Jerry Seinfeld is the nicest person on the planet, right? Jerry Seinfeld's shtick is that he isn't nice. Like, he is actually
he rebels in that.
Yeah, he's misanthropic. And, like, all his stand-up is him complaining about everything despite the fact that he is the luckiest fucker in the entire planet, right? Like, he should never complain about anything. Like, he's a guy who tells, like, really simple, good jokes, and he's become, like, a billionaire out of that. Like, he's had the most successful, probably, sitcom in the history of fucking television. He's got this incredible career. He's, like, being able to indulge every fantasy he's ever indulged in his entire fucking life, and you're still taking time to slag off Bobcat Goldthwait? Like, go fuck yourself, Jerry. Come on. What is the deal with billionaire stand-up comedians?
I don't know where I saw it, but there's a clip online of an American comedian who did like 5 minutes at a New York stand-up club as Jerry Seinfeld. Have you seen this, where he does like all my girlfriend's so young jokes? What is the deal with picking up my girlfriend from high school? Okay, so Drew, after that show finishes and he goes on to Whose Line Is It Anyway, he does a bunch of things here. He starts appearing in commercials. He does a deal with Walt Disney World. He's way into video games. He makes a cameo appearance in The Sims. He directs a music video for Weird Al Yankovic. He enters the Royal Rumble in 2001. Like, talk about a renaissance man. Like, I'm always fascinated, we talk about The Rock, and it's like, why does The Rock work so hard? Why doesn't he do a TV show and these fucking talking tours? Like, he doesn't need to. He's got a perfectly good movie star career. He could just rest on his laurels.
Just on that, for a second, I will say that, like, because obviously The Rock sent me a birthday message, which
reached out to you.
Reached out to me, The Rock
reached out
for my birthday. And so what happened, for people who did not see this online, Adam Spencer, dear friend of the show, Adam Spencer, official fact checker for our podcast, Adam Spencer. Congratulations to him, by the way. Got married over the January period. So congratulations, Spence. I'm very, very happy. Been exchanging some messages with him about a whole bunch of stuff. And So Spence posted a photo for my birthday, and it was Spence and I and The Rock. And this was when The Rock came to Australia, before The Rock was like a big movie star. But we loved
You knew him when? Back when?
Back when he was the most electrifying man in sports and entertainment. You know, now he's the man who's literally opening the Super Bowl. Did you see this? Where The Rock came out and did his like spiel, basically did a wrestling spiel to open the Super Bowl. I mean, look at that guy's fucking life. And in between opening the Super Bowl and opening 3 movies a year and like working out 18 hours a day and eating cheap meals like 6 hours every day, he has time to get onto Twitter and send me a message, because Spence posted this photo of The Rock and Spence and I and tagged in The Rock. And I thought, well, that's very funny. He goes, I bet The Rock wishes you happy birthday too. And then The Rock wished me happy birthday. So, Charlie, I have a question for you. Do you think that that was actually The Rock? Or do you think that The Rock has somebody who just does his social media? Because I can't imagine that The Rock has time between his incredibly busy schedule to also be fooling around on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I don't know, because the language he used, and if it is like an assistant, that person does all his Twitter or all his social media, because I follow him on everything, and there's a certain tone, sense of humor. Like he joked about, this is the face I make when I'm drunk. He did the tequila emojis because he loves a bit of a plugging the Terraman or whatever it is, his tequila brand. I reckon it was him. I mean, I think that we shouldn't be surprised that this guy who... Did you see that video he posted last week where it was like 2 a.m. and he just finished a workout, and he said that he just flew back from probably the Super Bowl, had a bunch of meetings, it got to 11 o'clock at night or midnight, and he realized he hadn't done his workout, and he's just a guy who gets things done. So now he's, just finished a 2-hour workout. He's going to get 4 hours sleep before the day starts again. So a guy who's fucking doing that, like, yeah, I reckon he does, like, he's on the treadmill. He's just fucking going through his menchies. And because I was thinking about it, like, he must get, he's got podcast, Mike. Can you just tell me how many Twitter followers The Rock has? Because like you got to say it's got to be in the tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of fucking menchies, right? That he gets tagged in.
You would imagine so, right?
Something about your post, like maybe he's got it filtered to just photographs, because I reckon he would have seen that photograph and that would have tickled his fancy. He probably hasn't seen it since it was taken. Why would he? Like it was a very sort of like niche appearance, and I reckon that maybe that's what happened. So maybe it's just because my heart wants to believe it, that The Rock is somehow connected to you, therefore he's connected to me. Because I did start thinking, fuck man, we did not make enough of all the TOEFOP art we've made with The Rock. Like we should have been tagging him in all that shit and getting a bit of a fucking retweet. Because he seems to, someone posted, I saw on TikTok or Instagram, because he did that verse in that rap song. And so someone sent him a message where they had written out his verse in text form, and they got a message back from The Rock, like an audio message where he finished the rhyme for them. And the guy's like, fuck, The Rock actually messaged me back. Unless he has, like Saddam Hussein, a team of people who are like, just know how he speaks and stuff and responding on his behalf. I think you did get a message from The Rock.
I mean, maybe it's what you just said, that he's got a team of people. Like he's got some sound-alikes, he's got like a voiceover guy. Because this is just a heaps more efficient way for him to do this, right? Is like he just goes, I'm The Rock, I've got all this money, I want to be able to like reach out to people and do this sort of thing. So I've got someone on social media, I've found a guy who can do my voice, I've got like a lookalike if we need to like sort of film something that like, if I can't be there for.
Find that is the hardest, the person who had to find a physical lookalike for the, so I need a dude who's almost 50, 6'4", and filled with walnuts, giant walnuts.
Now that's what they've actually done. It's a giant bag of walnuts. They've got a costume designer to feel like a skin wheel in some walnuts. And they get the guy who can do the voice to stand behind the bag of walnuts. And if you just film it from the right angle, you think it's The Rock.
Do you think it diminishes it at all if it is a PA?
Oh, no, I don't care. Like, I mean, it's good on him. Like, I don't mind. I just was curious, like, whether you think The Rock is actually doing his own social media. Because, Mike was going to tell us how many followers he has on Twitter. How many does he have, Mike? 15.8 million followers. So that's got to be a lot of messages that are being tagged at The Rock, you'd imagine, right?
Yeah, but, I mean, how does he fucking see... Or how are they picking... Even if it is a PA or a team of PAs wading through, just say he gets 10,000 a day. Like, how are they picking it, and why that one? You know
Maybe
what I
they're
mean?
responding
Surely
to
there's some kind of
like,
Make-A-Wish kid or something.
Verified. I'm verified. Like, so you might have
yes,
like
it
a
looks
filter
better.
for verified. You might have a filter for photos. Like, that is a good one. Perhaps, you can't even respond to a photo. Maybe a certain amount of followers. I think at some stage there was
Yeah.
some big American star who like started following all these people in Australia, and clearly what had happened was they got some social media manager who just basically was like, I'm going to follow any account that has over this many followers. Like, I
blue
can try,
tick.
like, right? So maybe there's that sort of thing. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy to think that he would be like, that's a part of his business directive is let's like have 100% fan interaction. Because what is the end game with this? Is it just to sell movie tickets, or is there a bigger fucking plan? And I feel like there's a bigger thing at play here. I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum, but when you see him talk about, his ambition and his dreams and all that kind of stuff, like, he's 100% earnest. Like, it does not. It's got that Tom Cruise kind of esque quality, but just a bit less kind of creepy and weird, where he genuinely feels like he is a force for good in the world, and he wants to make people happy. And his fans, he owes his fans everything. So maybe I'm just drinking the fucking Kool-Aid, but I'd like to think that like The Rock had at least some kind of directive given. So. Okay, he didn't type the letters, but someone had to consult him to say, hey, Rock, is this cool? Can we run this up the chain? These Australian comedians, do you reckon that's worth, they've got some significant followers, blue ticks. That's a yes to the Aussie market. When you become president of the world, we want to have allies in the Southern Hemisphere.
You know what I would think is that if you're going to make a joke about him being drunk, you probably need permission. Like, if it's not him, you probably have to run it by him.
Yes.
Like, there'd be some sort of material where you're just like, I can't just randomly make jokes about, like, if he wants to be president of America, right? Like, which he possibly does and possibly will be. So, and in fact,
In which case we need to copyright that Rock presidential poster that Foz did with Steve Austin. Like, that's gonna sell like hotcakes. We need to fucking lock that shit, NFT it, lock that shit down. Just a individual digital code so other people can't copy it.
yeah, exactly. And if anyone wants to buy that particular image, it is now worth $250,000. Okay, so Drew Carey. Sorry.
All right. Drew Carey. Okay, so he does a bunch of stuff. He leans to the right, to the left. He says he's libertarian, but leans left. Supported Biden, supported Obama. Very vocal against the Bush administration during the Iraq War. This is the interesting part. He's a devoted fan of the US national soccer team, as well as all the teams in Cleveland, the Browns, the Cavaliers, and the Guardians. But he became the official photographer for the women's football team. Like, he goes and takes photos of them playing, like when they compete in the World Cup and stuff.
Okay.
That's how he spends his days now. He's on the sidelines of the national team soccer. Hang on. Oh, not the women's. It's just the national team. So I don't know. Maybe it's men's and women's, or just one of them. But yeah, there's a photo of him at the Olympics, and he's got the official press accreditation. Like, you're a photographer there, and you turn around, there's Drew Carey. It's like, again, like I said, why, Drew? Like, you don't have to take photos. That's a lot of work. I imagine, like, you then have to go home and go through your proof sheet. Well, not your proof sheet, but go through all your selects and go, oh, this photo works well, and then submit it to an editor. And you know what the editor's going to say? Fucking no, like this multi-millionaire TV star comedian. Like, he's going to say, sorry, I don't think your photographs are good enough.
I mean, I imagine that he takes good photographs. Like, I imagine they're not just sending him because he's Drew Carey, right? But I like this about him. I
reckon
like
it'd be a
the
bit
fact
of
that he's leveraging his fame. I'm not saying they would be the best photographs. I'm not saying if you got a room of photographers in and went, who are the best, that Drew's would necessarily be the best. But I think there'd be some level of competence that would be needed to be. They can't just go, it's good enough to have Drew Carey here. He didn't really get a shot at any of the goals or any of our players. This one's of a knee. Whose knee is that? We don't really know. Oh, it's good to have Drew Carey here.
Yeah. Hey, Drew, whose fucking knee is it anyway? So it says here, when he competed in the Royal Rumble, he lasted more than a minute and a half, but after Kane entered the ring and refused a monetary bribe, Carey eliminated himself by jumping over the top rope. In 2011, Carey was inducted into WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, again, Renaissance man. He's in the WWE Hall of Fame. He contributes extensively to charities. There's a number of charities in his name. He's donated hundreds of thousands of dollars, or probably millions, it says here. Also came fifth in the World Poker Tour, beating out Jack Black, winning money for charity. So there you go. That's the career of Drew Carey. Like, you know, occasionally we stumble across someone and we're like, this person's fucking like, you know, you sort of just forget about them, but they're having this rich, fulfilled life that you know nothing about.
Yeah, and it is interesting, isn't it? Because he hasn't had that desperation to be as big a star as he was when he was the star of the Drew Carey Show. Like, he's been happy to take other
just doing
roles,
his shit.
do other jobs, indulge some other passions. He's like, this is great. Like, I'm not competing, you know, to be the hugest comedian in the world. I've got more time to go to some soccer games and take some photos. Do some soccer.
Yeah,
go and indulge my passion to upskirt at soccer matches.
And being inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame. Will, we'll wrap up soon. Before we do, the mailbag has been gathering dust. People obviously realised over the break that, you know, we weren't going to get to it. So we didn't get a heap of mail over the sort of December, January period. But I've made some selects and we'll just whip through these. Scott wants to know, have we watched Succession? That's how old this is. Like, have you heard of this new show, Succession?
Yes, I've watched it all. Have you watched the most recent season?
Yes, I'm very up to date on Succession. I love it. I just think it is. It's almost there's so many brilliant lines per episode. It's hard to keep up. Like, I often think that maybe I should rewatch it because the writing is so brilliant and it's delivered so well that it's just like you can't even take it all in. It's like a sumptuous meal.
Well, that's the whole point of it. And like, I mean, Amy she hates it. She hates the fact that people love
really?
it. She's like, she liked it early on, but she's completely dropped off, and her rants about it are 100% true. That's the funny thing. Like, I love the show, but I'm like, I'm going to go and watch Succession. And she goes, oh, what's happening? Are they all sitting around in a room arguing about who should run the company? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, that is exactly what they're doing. And this week in particular, they're literally in one boardroom arguing about who should run the company. Oh, everybody will love that. They'll be on the internet tomorrow. Oh, it's Greg. We all love Greg. And I'm like, yeah, okay, right. That is Succession. You're absolutely right. But I also do love it.
Samuel says, hey fellas, I've been going through some old episodes, and at one point you talked about releasing an episode on tape. Is that something you're still thinking about? No, we haven't discussed it.
No.
I think that the I think
Answer at the same time. No.
No. The kind of the gimmick merch, I think it's really hard to be original now. Like, I think when you know, we had the court illustrator come to our live show and stuff. Like, that was pretty funny. But now, like, vinyl's been done, tapes have been done. The Weekly Planet, James Clement is my guest this week on Fofop. They did one where it was like a mixtape, but also like a USB. So I don't know, man. I think it'd be a lot of expense and effort, and I don't know if it'd be particularly rewarding. If there's enough demand for it, like, hey, fuck it, yeah, sure, we'll do it, but not at this stage. Okay, so this is from an American listener, M. It's a bit longer, so maybe we can finish on this one because I think she wants some advice. The subject is, am I the asshole or the asshole for defending my parents? Hey guys, I was hoping you could help me determine if I'm the asshole in this situation. The story begins many years ago before I was even born. My mum and dad's my mum and my dad's brother's wife don't like each other and haven't for 50 years. Despite this, us cousins have had a fairly uneventful relationship with one another. We aren't close by any means, but we are definitely cordial. Cordial? Cordial. We're definitely
But we're also cordial. We are a sweet syrup that you can add water to. We are delicious.
Fast forward to last week. It turns out my daughter is on the same basketball team as my cousin's daughter, and there is a parents group text. My cousin's husband made a big mistake by accidentally bad-mouthing my parents in the group chat instead of whoever he intended to chat with. The text said something about Shane and Flo. My name's changed for privacy. The Shane and Flo show. With Shane and Flo, like, if I met a couple in like the Gold Coast called Shane and Flo, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. That sounds like, I know that's your pseudonyms, but that's a very Gold Coast pairing, don't you think?
Yeah, it's Shane and Flo. Like, I mean, it even sounds like a business, like Shane and Flo from Shane and Flo Enterprises.
Yeah. I texted the group chat back in the Shane and Flo show ? And then I received a private text message back that he was deeply sorry and meant no disrespect. But he did. But he did mean disrespect.
Of course he did. Absolutely. He meant it and he disrespected them.
After stewing on it for a few days, I see this jerk face-to-face picking up my daughter from basketball practice. He came up to me and he said he wanted to talk about what happened, to which I replied, "We don't have to," and continued to walk past him. He kept talking and I snapped, "Well, I hope they put on a good enough show for you," and walked out of the building. Do you guys think I was an asshole? I didn't need to hear his bogus apology that was only happening because he got caught. I don't like to live with hate in my heart, but fuck people who badmouth my amazing parents. Can't wait to hear what you think. M. What do you think, Will? Is she the asshole in the situation?
No, I think you're always entitled to defend your parents if you want to. I think that even unreasonably, even if your parents were the Shane and Flo show, like, you know, even if they were that, even if that was absolutely he had nailed them 100% and you can't see it because you're their, you know, their daughter, then that is, to me, absolutely fine. That's what it should be. You should always defend your parents in that situation. My parents could fuck up so badly. They wouldn't. It's the opposite, in fact. They've had to defend my fuck ups. But yeah, I would publicly defend them. I would tell, and yeah, I mean, of course, for somebody you love, I think that's a good thing to do.
I also think too, there's an element of when someone wants to apologize, and it feels like in this instance, it's about assuaging your own guilt as opposed to genuinely, you know, feeling like you need to make amends. That person probably obviously felt terrible. Whenever I am in the wrong in those situations, I tend to just give it a wide berth. Like, I find that, you know, especially if you try and fix stuff in the moment, that is the worst. People have to fucking process anger. You can't convince someone. It's like when you tell someone to calm down, never fucking works. Like, so I don't think you're an asshole. Would I have behaved in that manner? No, I probably would have meekly accepted the apology and just fucking like stewed about it myself for a long, long time. But no, I don't think you're an asshole.
Certainly don't think you're an asshole. But I'm going to put that on the record. I ordinarily, you know me, I don't want to have a confrontation with anybody. But I think if it was my parents and I was defending my parents' honor, this might be the one exception where I reckon this might be the sort of thing I would do as well. And it would just be like, I don't want to hear this shit from you. And then me just like trying to sling a good line over my shoulder as I exited. This feels like actually very on brand for what I would want to do. I would want to get the big, to quote, Seinfeld, you get the big laugh and you get out on the laugh, you get out of the room. And that's what I would have been doing in that situation for sure.
You would have whose line is it anyway? You just would have been just like ripping zingers off the top of your head. The Shane and Flo show is good to go as far as I'm concerned. I haven't seen a show good since Hey Hey It's Saturday.
Yeah, not like your mum's show, the Blow and Go show, if you know what I'm saying.
Tofop is back. Will, so great to be talking to you again. And thank you, everyone, for downloading the episode. If you want to check out more episodes, you can go to tofop.com. Little bit of housekeeping. Funny story, Will. In the off-season, in our break, Mike and I were doing a little work on the website and we realized we were paying for a subscription service for a platform that we weren't using anymore. And so we canceled that subscription on consultation with each other. And as it turns out, we basically removed 323 episodes of Tofop from the website. We are in the process of putting them back on the website. It's episodes 1 to episodes 323. I've done the first 40 eps, they're back. But if you want to access old episodes, do it through your device. They're still available on devices, just not on the website. I thought it was very Tofop of us. So before anyone emails in, yes, we're aware. Some episodes are not available on the website, but you can check out other great episodes. Fofop is up and running. As I said, James Clement is my guest this week. Always great to talk to James. And then Footy Fixes with Scott Dooley, our summer series for Two Guys, One Cup. That will have an episode coming out on Thursday. But for now, I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson.
Everyone relax!
This podcast is a Tofop production.
Head to tofop.com for more.
Cool things for cool people.